Thanks very much for the invitation to present here today. We're delighted to share the work of the Farm Peat project. Myself and Bernie are presenting, but just to acknowledge everything we're presenting today is obviously a result of a team effort and obviously all the work of the farmers as well. The aims of the project, so we're a European Innovation Partnership, a short-term pilot project, and the aims of the project are essentially to work with the farmers to design and trial a results-based agri-environmental scheme with the aim of trialling methods of improved management or sustainable management of peat soils in the Midlands. And also the second aim, which is very big, and we're not going to speak a whole lot about it today, is the increasing the awareness of the importance of this, the increasing awareness of the importance of the management of peat soils. We do a lot of work, obviously, with our farmers. Bernie will speak a good bit about that. But we also do a lot of work with school children and third-level students as well, trying to reach the next generation of farmers, the next generation of agricultural advisors, and also a lot of work with community groups. So this is where we are. We've 8 project sites. They're all raised bogs in the Midlands of Ireland. We're in Offaly mostly, South Roscommon, Westmeath and County Kildare. All of the sites are raised bogs, and we're working with farmers who are farming the land on the boundaries of those raised bogs. Most of the farms have mineral land coming down to the raised bog, which is where their peaty soils are. This is a map of one of our project sites in County Roscommon. The red line there is showing you the limit of the high bog. The purple lines are showing you all the agricultural land around the raised bog. So you can see this raised bog is predominantly surrounded by agricultural land. All the land then that's kind of outlined in green or orange are farms within the Farm Peat project scheme. And I suppose the reason I wanted to put this up is just to highlight if we have large targets nationally to re-wet agricultural peat soils, and you're going to have a lot of neighbouring landowners involved if you are going to reach those targets. This is one of the sites where we have a relatively high number of farmers involved, but you can see the gaps. Peat, this has been mentioned before, so I won't go into too much detail, but what is peat and where is it? So those are the two things, obviously, that are very important. There's a bit of variation in terms of the definition of peat. We've gone with soils that have greater than 17% organic carbon and a depth of minimum 30 centimetres, so a little bit different to the EPA definition of organic soils. The orange dots, well, first of all, the hatched area there that you can see, the hatched blue lines are indicating peat soils to us based on mapping in the soil information system. We've gone out onto all our farms and done soil sampling on all the peaty plots. And the orange lines there, and the orange circles and the green circles are points on that farm which are not actually peat according to our definition. So you can see we have a lot of orange and green in the area that was actually mapped as peat. So this is one of the farms. I must say most of the farms have come up as peat where it was mapped, but it's just a point to take home that you have to verify that the peat is there. The results-based approach, so I'm going to just explain this in a little bit more detail. I suppose we're proposing, and it's been mentioned before, Bernard alluded to it as well, that the results-based approach is an approach that could be taken forward in a carbon farming framework kind of situation. So in an agri-environmental scheme situation, results-based means that the farmers are getting paid for the results on the ground and not really directly for the action. So traditionally, your GLAS and your REPs were action-based agri-environmental schemes where farmers were selecting an action to undertake and getting paid upon completion of that action, regardless of the efficacy or the impact on the ground. The results-based approach flips it a little bit. We're looking for specific results. If the land or the farmland can produce those results, there's a payment associated with it. Obviously, the higher the score, the higher the payment, or the higher the quality, the higher the payment to the farmer. So for a results-based approach to work, you have to have a very good scoring system in place, and it's very important that a lot of effort is put into that scoring system to design it properly. In our scoring system, we score a farm. Each field gets a score between 0 and 10, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. You can see here from these photographs, these are all photographs of grasslands on peat soils. The low quality farm fields are fields which are high quality for agricultural production. So the farmer is getting a payment from his agricultural produce from those plots, but not from the environmental ecosystem services payments. So our payments range from €0 for a 0 score up to €450 per hectare for a score of 10, the top quality. And I suppose just important to say, when we're designing our scoring system, we actively chose to include biodiversity and water quality as well. So we're not paying just for carbon, it's a whole system approach, it's an ecosystem service approach. This is just to mention, I suppose, that we have a payment for the score, that's called the results-based payment, and the farmers also have access to a supporting actions payment. And this is to help farmers undertake actions to improve their score, improve the quality on the ground. The scorecard, so I mentioned these are quite important. I'm going to focus a little bit here on our wet grassland scorecard, which is the one we use for all the grasslands on peat soils. We also have scorecards for field boundaries, which includes your hedgerows and tree lines. These have been mentioned already today. Also for woodlands and peatland plots as well. The scorecard is divided into 3 sections. There's an assessment of the ecological integrity of the field, what kind of species are present, what percentage cover they have, and the quality of the vegetation structure. Section B is hydrology. This is key, obviously, in our peat soils. It's been mentioned today that we want the water table high, so we want wet peat soils to be of benefit for carbon, biodiversity and water quality. We have 50% of the score of each plot going for hydrology. And then section C is in relation to damaging activities. This is where a field can lose points. Payments to farmers, so we've been paying out for 3 years to farmers. The results-based payment based on the scoring, our max is 9,000, minimum 39, and the average annual payment to any farmer is just short of 2,000. We top up any payments to €800 minimum so that no farmer is feeling like leaving us. The total payments then includes the supporting actions and any other payments that we have for monitoring or allowing access to farms for groups, etc. And you can just see it's a little bit higher, but our average payment there is just over just nearly €2,500. Just to give you an idea of the work in terms of peatland restoration, in terms of raising the water table, that some of our farmers have undertaken. So 14% of our farmers have either completed or are about to complete actions, drain management actions, raising the water table. The top photographs there are on a farm in all of these photographs are on a farm in County Roscommon. The farmer has undertaken 2 types of actions. He's installed plastic dams and peat dams. So the top ones are the plastic dams, where the peat or the plastic has been installed in the drain to raise the water table up. I should say as well, it's the farmer's decision as to how high he or she wants to raise that water level in the drain. This farmer was happy to bring the water level up to the bank of the drain. And you can see there's a notch in the middle of the dam there. That's to allow the water to escape at the set level that was agreed upon. The second picture there, you can see there's a pipe, but that is in the middle of a peat dam. So the pipe is there to allow the water to flow through. So we're not blocking the water, we're just slowing it down. The water will flow through at the level of the top of the pipe. That can actually be adjusted. You can see it's on a U-bend, so that can be adjusted slightly. And this is giving great reassurance to our farmers that if they put in these types of dams, they can slightly modify the level in the drain if needs be. So that's the dam at completion, and 2 weeks later there's the level of the water in the drain a lot higher. Case study B then, just another farmer in our project. It's a dairy farmer. The previous one was a mixed sheep and beef farmer. We have a few dairy farmers in the project, and this one is also adjacent to a raised bog, mineral land, and then the peaty soil is down near the bog. This photograph is actually his peaty plot. And you can see it's nice and rich, lots of ryegrass and clover there. A key field in his grazing regime. He says the cows milk the best when they come off this field, and he's not looking to do any drain management actions, but he's engaging with the scheme and being part of the project. Just something that has come up today as well, I suppose, is, where is that water going and how can we estimate the area of peat that's being impacted by this work? So when you raise the water level in the drain, how much of the land around it is actually being re-wet? And obviously we have to take account of neighbouring landowners as well, which we have done. But in terms of estimating the area re-wet for that farmer, and it has implications for the payments also, we've worked with RPS consultants who have a depression model which indicates to us where the area, where the land is that's going to be re-wet, and our definition is where the water level is brought up to within 50 centimetres of the surface. So the RPS ran that model. They're very happy with this model on the high bog, I should say. This is the first time they've run it in an agricultural setting, so we're not quite sure of the accuracy of it, but it gives us an indication that about 0.8 hectares will be re-wetted just on that farm in Roscommon, the dams you saw earlier. Our own method of estimating it is a bit more straightforward, just taking 15 metres on either side of the drain, and that is coming up at 1.2 hectares. So based on the 7 farmers, the 14% that I mentioned earlier, that are undertaking drain management actions, we estimate that we will have a total of 7 hectares re-wet. Payments to farmers, I'm just going to whiz through this one, but we do have payments obviously for completing these actions. We have one farm in County Offaly where there was neighbouring farmers involved. You can see the A, B and C, that's 3 different farmers, and they all get a payment from the re-wetting actions that were undertaken. I'm going to pass over to Bernie now, and he's going to just explain some of the work that we do with farmers in terms of bringing the science to farmers.
Thank you, Caroline. So this photograph you've already seen. It's from one of our dairy farmers. To a lot of people, this is actually a perfect piece of farmland, but actually this is degraded peatland. And this is what we're trying to convey to our project farmers when we engage with them, primarily through our training days, and when we actually visit their farms and have conversations with them, that degraded peatland isn't always what it actually seems. Originally, when we started the project, the emissions from the EPA on drained peatland was an average 27 hectares or 27 tonnes per hectare. But we know that they've now revised their figures, and we used to explain this to farmers that was the equivalent. 27 tonnes per hectare of CO2 was the equivalent of 4 family cars, but now it's down to 12 tonnes per hectare. So we drive 2 of the cars away. Okay. This is one of the I suppose, slides that we use to explain to farmers the importance of raised bogs in terms of the amount of carbon that they store. This is John Connolly, our good friend, has allowed us to use this. Basically, the Amazon rainforest, everybody assumes that it's very, very rich in carbon, but when you actually go along and you compare it to an Irish intact raised bog, Amazon rainforest has about 250 tonnes of carbon stored, mostly overground, but a raised bog that's 4.5 metres deep will actually store over 3,000 tonnes of carbon, and it's something that really grabs people when we actually show them this. Okay, knowledge exchange key messages here. So, as you see on the left-hand side, we have a drain, and on the right-hand side we have a dam put in, so the water table has been raised. We say that if you can bring up the water table by 20 centimetres, and in this instance bring it up from 70 centimetres to 50 centimetres, you can still farm on that land. But the real value of it is that for every 20 centimetre increase in the water table on peat soils, it reduces emissions by 6 tonnes of CO2 per year, which is quite a lot. So just as we said that the peatland under grass, you can't actually see that it's degraded peatland. So we use this, which is basically a monument that was put in Portlaoise to celebrate the bypass of the town. It was constructed with peat and looked very well when it was put in 1997. But roll on 23 years, it has disappeared almost completely. And that's because it's been exposed to oxygen in the air. The carbon-rich turf dried out and decomposed and eventually disappeared from view, having been converted to gas and water. Okay, it's a very visual indictment of exposed peat. So we go back to the farmers. So what do the farmers like about our project? Well, they like the flexibility. If you want to take on actions, you can. If you don't want to, well, you don't have to, okay? But then your score won't increase and your payment won't increase either. They like the personal interaction that we have and the relationships that can strike up because we have time to talk to them. We go through all the measures, we do our farm plans, and we can show them where they can actually increase their score and therefore increase their payment. We also bring them together for training days, and very often you find farmers talking to each other, and telling their stories of their experiences working on peat soils and how things have changed over the years, and very often how the peat has actually dropped in those fields, and we're able to explain why. All these actions are voluntary. They can take them or they needn't. So the drain management that you've seen there is all voluntary, okay? Okay, so what farmers actually want, basically to be sufficiently incentivized to go along and to make these changes. And long-term commitment. Okay, we've heard that already today. We heard that from Bernard. So the future, this is what we really want to know. What is the baseline? So for us, it's very important to know what the baseline is, because some of our farmers already have taken re-wetting actions. We don't want them to be disenfranchised if this baseline is drawn up in another year or two. We'd like them to get paid for the work they've already done, because they're the first movers, very, very important people, the people who make the first move. And where's the money going to come from for these farmers? We've heard that today already, that there is a method there. Carbon credit needs to be strongly linked with biodiversity and water quality. Caroline feels very, very strong about that. I think that's basically what we need to do with the nature restoration law. All of this has to move forward together. Okay, I feel very strongly in terms of the 20-year commitment. That's what farmers need. I call it transgenerational. It needs to be there. Price high enough, not too high. We spoke about that earlier on in terms of the carbon credit. Verification needed to be of the highest standard. We already heard that today. It needs to be copper fastened, that any changes that are made are actually, they're spot on. Scorecards needs to be refined. Okay, we can refine our scorecard to take in carbon credits. We believe that this can be done, and the FarmPEAT method is actually a very sound way of moving forward. Through training, scores need to be trained. Okay, so we know AI is going to be very much a part of assessing peatlands going forward and carbon storage, but we actually believe that having the person on the ground to assess the situation as well is very important. And research to determine the distance from drain to where water table is impacted and the magnitude of such impacts. We know this was one of the points brought up earlier. Are we actually intruding on other farmers? Well, our project wasn't very long, but if we had it to go back again to the start, I think we would have done measurements going out from the drain into the middle of the field for a year before we did any re-wetting, and then post re-wetting then for the following year, we would have actually been able to measure those raising the water table. So that's it, folks, basically.